everyone, welcome back to Spider-Man Page by Page. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
Today, Dan and I are tackling The Vulture's Return. This is the Amazing Spider-Man number 7, an issue that I think thinks that people are more excited about this first returning supervillain than they possibly could be.
I mean, I'm excited to see the Vulture back. I wish he was in a story. Because this issue is clearly Stanley and Steve Ditko just trying to capitalize on whatever popularity the Vulture had garnered from his first appearance. And this issue is mostly just pure in-costume fighting the Vulture. There's not a whole lot of story. I mean, he does make some like further advances on Betty at the end of the issue, but that's like all we really get in terms of new story stuff. And there is some like retreading of some of the stuff we did in the last issue where Peter's like, oh, you know, I have to look really wimpy whenever I go to be Spider-Man, which we, you know, played with in the last like couple issues. But yeah, it's not really heavy on story. It's just kind of action.
And the action's really good.
It is good, yeah.
I'll point out some really cinematic panels here and there. And even when we're not in knockdown, drag-out action scenes, there's some really cool, for lack of a better term, placement of camera.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, Steve Ditko's good at all that kind of stuff.
I'm not... So you said trying to capitalize on whatever popularity the Vulture has. I'm not convinced this isn't just Stan Lee, for whatever reason, either really liking the idea of this character himself and wanting to bring it back and claiming that people really wanted it.
Yeah, maybe it was sarcastic. Who knows?
Well, I don't think it's sarcastic. I think he's pretending like I think he's claiming people are rallying for this and they're not actually.
Well, it'd be interesting to go back and look at some of the letters pages because we haven't been looking at them. Maybe there actually was stuff in the letters pages.
Maybe so, but I had a conversation with Eric about this earlier, and I don't know how true this is, but Eric mentioned that Stan Lee apparently, like somewhat famously wrote some of the early letters himself.
Oh, really?
That's what he said, and I had never heard that before.
I've never heard that either. That's interesting.
So anyway, if that's the case, you can't be sure of anything.
Yeah, you just see all these letters like, I love the Vulture.
My big question is, why is the Vulture the first villain that we're bringing back?
Because, well, when we eventually bring Dr. Octopus back, which will be, I believe, issue 10, 11, or 12, it's a two-parter where they bring Doc Ock back, and that story's much better than this. So
Yeah. I just thought it was an interesting choice to do first, and I would argue that while again the action in this is fun, this is really padded out. I would say even more so than the Doctor Doom issue was.
I think so, and that's partly because the Vulture's grudge with Spider-Man isn't as complex as Dr. Doom's beef with the Fantastic Four, and we have to spend some time establishing that in that issue for people who don't read FF. So yeah.
I would say his beef isn't even as complex as Dr. Doom's beef becomes with Spider-Man, and there's not a lot there either.
That's true. I mean, the Vulture didn't have one of his apparently many supervillain bases destroyed by Spider-Man.
That's right. No, the Vulture's just like, yeah, I got out of prison, and I have a suit, and you can't beat me the way you did last time. What I was going to say earlier is I would argue that the Vulture's first issue is quite a bit better than this, and this feels like very much an obligatory sequel.
I think so, too. Yeah.
So, let's get into it, shall we? So, we'll talk about the cover for a second because it actually has writing on it, so I guess we'll mention that. Here's Spider-Man as you like him. Fighting! Fighting, joking, daring, challenging the most dangerous foe of all time in this, the Marvel Age of Comics. So we're just going to say that about every villain at some point, right? We're just like, this is the most dangerous, or this is the most menacing, or like we just had Doctor Doom 2 issues ago, and we acted like he was the be-all, end-all of all supervillains. But now we're calling the Vulture the most dangerous just to sell copies.
Yeah, and like Doctor Doom, there's an argument to be made about him, like in the greater Marvel universe even today, that he's like the biggest and baddest of all villains. The Vulture has never achieved that status. I don't even think in his first 2 appearances, let alone.
And I know you like him, that's totally cool, but we're basically...
Oh, I mean, I love the Vulture, but I'm not going to say he's like the most dangerous supervillain of all time.
The thing about the Vulture is, I don't even think he's dangerous in this. Like, at all. It's not that he's dangerous, is that he's hard to catch because he can fly and he has maneuvering ability.
See, I don't think you understand. We see the Vulture outmaneuvering a helicopter, and if Thanos was in his Thanos copter, like trying to chase after the Vulture would have beat him. So, I think he's supremely dangerous.
And we're also
even Doctor Doom in his helicopter. I mean, there's two villains he could have beaten right there.
Okay, so the moral of the story here is it's like rock, paper, scissors. Flying beats web swinging. Apparently. Except it won't.
And flying beats helicopters, and there's only 3 options in a game of rock, paper, scissors, so...
Okay, but helicopters can also fly. So you mean Vulture type wing flying beats helicopter? Well, it's at least all air maneuvers then, so that's good. So it's the rock, paper, scissors of superhero and villain aerial maneuvers. We have web spinning or slinging, we have helicopter propellers, and we have wings.
This is true. But the cheat of the game, of course, as always with Spider-Man stories, this is kind of a recurring motif, is Peter Parker's brain is the thing that eventually defeats the Vulture,
right.
Even though he has an advantage over him.
That's the elusive fourth invisible choice in rock, paper. I really thought you were going to say, as in all games of rock, paper, scissors. I was like, what is the way that you cheat in rock, paper, scissors, Dan?
I'm actually an aficionado of this game. I've read many of them.
Yeah? Have you ever been to a convention? Have you been to a rock, paper, scissors convention?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. It's the Return of the Vulture.
And this is a much less grand title page than from what we're used to with Steve Ditko. This is just kind of Spider-Man hanging upside down on the Vulture.
Yep, he's flying. Spider-Man's hanging there. There you go. And this is where Stan Lee's making a big deal out of the notion that we have brought back the Vulture because the readers demanded it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Stan Lee talks about this all the time, about trying to make Marvel seem like an exclusive club as opposed to like the DC stuff where he wanted Marvel to feel like it had a relationship with its fans in a way that DC didn't, where they were responding to their readers, all of their letters, and even like writing stories that were demanded by them. They weren't just trying to pander to an audience. They really wanted to have a relationship. He wanted to make it feel like a club and things like that. So I would imagine
really ahead of his time, because that resonates with people. I mean, that excites people. They want to feel like they have part ownership of these characters.
Yeah, I mean, Stan Lee was onto something that, like, you know, is still practiced today and has become, I would argue, even more prevalent with the internet and the way people are able to react instantly to things.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, way more prevalent, and sometimes to a fault, that can become really problematic sometimes. So let's get into the story itself. We have a short recap at the beginning, which I kind of expected to be a couple pages, and I was glad it wasn't, because there wouldn't have been enough material to spend 2 pages recapping this, but I kind of thought that's what was going to happen.
Exactly, yeah. I've always find it amusing, like, going back to read this issue where, like, the prison security guards don't refer to the Vulture as Adrian Toomes. They just call him Vulture when he's in jail.
Oh, it's funny. I kind of forgot he had a name, actually, because they kept calling him that through the whole age. But yeah, of course.
And then he, like, develops flying technology that works with just, like, flaps of prison garb.
Because Stan Lee reads about science.
It almost makes, like, the costumes seem sillier, because it's like, he's just wearing that because he thinks it looks cool. Like, if you could just fly around with regular clothes on, like, what's the point of the feathers and everything?
Boy, that's such a good point, and you wouldn't have to be as conspicuous. I mean, if you're flying around in the air, people are probably going to notice that and be like, it doesn't matter what you're wearing, that's weird. But, you know, a big green suit.
Yeah. And
you're going to stick out a little bit.
Green. But anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right, that's absolutely so it's not because he's got wings and feathers. Yeah, that's great. I love the comic book logic of that. It's hilarious.
Me too.
So he builds so basically he's building a new suit that can't be defeated with the anti-magnetic inverter that Peter Parker used last time. And he escapes, and he goes right over the wall. Look, he made himself a new flying gizmo. He's gliding over the wall.
He looks like a flying monkey from The Wizard of Oz. And
yeah, go
more
ahead.
of Peter Parker being harassed by Flash Thompson. This is kind of, a recurring trope of every issue that we've seen so far, anyway.
Yeah, once again, this is very much our formula right now. We're going to be broken records for a while till we finally get more away from this.
Yeah,
Where
after issue 10, I vaguely remember, because I have the omnibus now, but I used to have this in volumes, like the Masterwork volumes. I remember it hitting its stride after issue 10. So once we get past there, the stories become a little bit more complex. Like you'll get your first like two-parter with Dr. Octopus right after issue 10, and then the Green Goblin shows up, and that becomes an ongoing plot. So yeah, it does hit its stride in a little while here, but it is a little bit formulaic, and at least in most of its first year of publication. No, this is past a year now because it was, or maybe no, I don't know, because it was bi-monthly for a while. I don't remember when that started or stopped, but anyway.
So once again, Peter is forced to kind of mess up his own reputation by acting like he doesn't feel good because he played a game of volleyball.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so that he can be excused to go after the Vulture. And I love that he knows he's about to deal with the Vulture, and then he says, "This double identity jazz is for the birds."
Yeah, it is, and we're seeing on full display here like the imperfection of Peter Parker as a character. Like he always tries to make the right choice, but in the back of his mind, he's like, I want to splatter Flash Thompson all over the pavement.
Yeah. As far as thematic stuff goes, we're kind of stuck talking about the same things that we did last time we saw the Vulture, and with not a lot of elaboration. It's because we talked about the kind of young versus old thing, which really isn't here at all.
No, it's not. On this page, particularly, one of the things I found to be really amusing, as an indication of maybe the young versus old thing, is that Peter Parker, like as a superhero, can't leave his house until a certain time.
Well, yeah, that's true, but I would say that
I mean, it's not thematic or anything. It's just like this young kid like can't leave his house. That's like in this suburban area because he lives with his aunt.
But we had that with the Doctor Doom issue too. Like of course he's older also, but I don't think we're really comparing them or anything. It's just
Right.
those are the kinds of issues that Peter Parker is always having to deal with, no matter who his villain is.
Exactly. Right.
But I was gonna mention that the only other thing that we really have is they're both inventors and they're both scientists, and this is a thing we've talked about before.
That's right. Yeah.
But I think Stan Lee is making a big deal out of it on this page with Spider-Man going, "Look, here's this neat thing I invented," and the Vulture is like, "Look, here's this neat thing I invented."
Yeah, it's almost like this feels to me sort of like whenever Marvel tries to make artificial jumping on points for their comics, as they have been in recent years, where we're kind of like recapping old stories and like reestablishing some of the tropes of the book. Like Spider-Man's like, I have web shooters and they're really cool,
Yeah, maybe in case you've got new readers that have latched onto this, and we haven't talked about the web shooters much the last couple issues, so this kind of puts it right back, or puts it back in people's faces again.
Yeah, because remember it did just become popular enough to warrant a monthly series. So yeah, maybe this is kind of the point one of old Spider-Man.
It's a good jumping on point there, Dan.
Yeah.
We're explaining what we had with this villain in the first place. Not that you would need it anyway.
Stanley's just like, I don't think people can count to 6. We should probably start over the book.
So Peter is kind of showing off his is still his naivety and how wet behind the ears he is, with not considering that if the Vulture is back, maybe he would have found some way around the way you beat him last time, especially since he knows how you beat him last time. Dan, are you there?
Yeah, I could. Were you talking? For a minute there, like you were in the middle of a sentence, and then it just went silent. And I couldn't hear anything if you were saying anything.
Yeah, we had a call quality problem there for a minute.
Oh, weird.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, so I was just saying, so Peter Parker is kind of showing off his naivety a little bit and how wet behind the ears he is again, with assuming that the Vulture coming back and having a new set of wings, he wouldn't have found some way around the way he beat him last time, especially since he knows how he beat him last time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that, like, we don't really have any sort of technical explanation as to how the wings are all that different either.
No, that's true.
It's just kind of like
how do
they're
they work
immune to the
differently?
weakness last time.
Yeah, do they work on the same principle? I would assume so.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, well, Stanley's not thinking about it, so neither should we. So now the Vulture versus helicopters, and I like that he's like, oh cool. Hold on. There we go. That he's like, oh cool. This gives me a chance to try out my new suit. Let's go up against some helicopters.
Yeah, and he finds a random jewelry store, robs that. Then he contemplates where he shall strike next.
Yeah, he's kind of just flying around doing stuff. I don't know what exactly his goals are, except, you know, I guess he wants to fight Spider-Man and beat him finally. And he sees himself as invincible because he's got these cool wings, so he'll just go do whatever he wants to. But I don't feel like he has really a thought-out plan right now.
No, definitely not. And I love, like we were talking about the bolding of words last time, with that guy in the bottom right panel of that last page where he's like, somebody do something.
It's like, what are we going to do? And so the cops can't shoot him because he's flying all over the place and there's all these bystanders. And I don't know if we're supposed to think the Vulture is like especially clever or like really street smart for thinking of flying around where people are so that he can't be shot by police officers. Like, I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to take from this character, except he's just a nuisance and it's cool because he's the first one that we're getting to see again.
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe the idea is supposed to be that, like, he's so overwhelmingly powerful with this ability to fly that, like, he's unstoppable in the way that Spider-Man would be if he didn't have a moral compass. But, like, that's not really, like, the crux of the focus of the story at all. It's all just kind of, like, look at the cool action scenes, you know?
Yeah. It's very much a throwaway action issue, and it's kind of Golden Age-y in that way, except for the token Peter Parker having to deal with personal life stuff while trying to be Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I do like you said, looking at some of the art on this page, like I do like that close up of the Vulture there. Like it looks pretty good. Like the face is very well detailed and things.
Yeah, and Spider-Man, of course, is always using this opportunity to try to further his own personal goals. So he's got his camera and he's taking pictures of the Vulture. Has he not yet figured out a way to get pictures of both him and a villain at the same time? I feel like this has been a thing the last couple issues at least, where he'll get a picture either of Spider-Man or of the villain, but he never has both.
Yeah, I don't think he's really figured out how to do that yet. That's right, yeah. Because, like, in the Sandman issue, he was just kind of, like, throwing sand in the air and taking pictures of himself, which is really funny.
Yeah, that was great. But that seems to be kind of a problem right now. Like I'm kind of wondering if that'll be a thing where it'll be played as kind of a plot point where it's, oh, I just figured out how to get us both in camera.
Yeah, I can't remember if they put any emphasis on that in any of the stories. I can't really recall at the moment. But this is a pretty cool little sequence here, where the Vulture's flying upwards. And I don't know how particularly clever it is, because, like Spider-Man, it just didn't occur to him to look down. But maybe it's just happening so fast he didn't have enough time. I don't know.
Maybe so. It is a little bit difficult to get a sense of space with this one, I suppose.
Yeah.
Just with these aerial fights.
Mm-hmm.
Of, like, how quickly things are happening. So the Vulture gets a really good punch in, and then as they're fighting here on this next page, he's gonna drop him completely. And this is the one really cool thing I think about this issue, where, and I think this is the big thing Stan Lee's emphasizing, is this is a character that has to deal with real world ailments and can be hurt and won't heal right away.
Right.
And that comes I like that he has to deal with an injury through most of the issue.
Yeah, that is really cool. I like that he has to consider, like, what he's going to tell his aunt, what he's going to tell people at school. All that sort of interpersonal drama is really good.
This panel at the top here is one of those great examples of less is more, and that Stan Lee should have left well enough alone. We see Spider-Man thinking all these things he's thinking as he's dropping, but we're watching him already hitting the top of this building.
Yeah.
And that's awkward. Like, if there was a way to put it, on the previous panel, that's what I would have done. Or just don't do it. But he's like, oh, I got to spin around in the air. But like, we're seeing him having already hit the roof.
Yeah, I think if Steve Ditko had laid out, like, if he had taken a little bit more time to like show him falling and stuff, that would have been warranted. Or maybe Stan Lee was trying to convey that Spider-Man didn't land properly, and that's why he's broke his arm. Like, if Spider-Man had been able to shift his position, he wouldn't have hurt himself.
Yeah, but the problem is it's just overly explained as it often is, where then he's going to talk about how, if I had only pivoted, and then he's going to talk about how he thinks he broke his arm. We have all that already. I kind of feel like ow would have sufficed.
Yeah, that's true.
That's my main complaint about this issue, is that panel.
And I find it amusing that everyone just immediately thinks Spider-Man's dead after he hits the roof.
Yeah.
And it's kind of encouraging, I guess, in this point in the continuity, that people, especially the police, are kind of sad that Spider-Man's gone when they think he's dead, despite everything that Jameson says about him.
Yeah, this cop says, despite what Jameson's editorial said about him, we cops always felt he was on our side.
Yeah.
All of them. Blanket statement. But I like the idea, but I like the kind of the image of, cops kind of sitting around the water cooler talking about Spider-Man. Like, I don't know what this Jameson guy's problem is. He's kind of helping us out.
Yeah, exactly.
He's making our lives a little bit easier. And you've got to have both sides of that. The negative consequences to Spider-Man's actions, but the positive ones also. Because if only bad things ever happen, when Spider-Man tries to intervene in something, his responsibility would very quickly be to leave well enough alone.
Exactly, right.
The whole with great power thing breaks down real hard if you're just clearly so incompetent that you always ruin everything.
Yes, exactly.
And Spider-Man. Spider-Man certainly messes up things all the time, but he has to actually solve problems also.
Exactly, and I think this is a trap that some Spider-Man writers I've seen fall into after this, where it's just kind of like Peter, everything goes wrong for him in his personal life and in a crime fighting sense, and then he kind of recovers at the end, but at the end of the story, you think to yourself, if he was just uninvolved in the situation, everything would have turned out better, the way the story's written. I can't. Without explaining a story to you, I can't explain or articulate exactly the way things went. But you just think about the circumstances in which he entered the situation. It's if Spider-Man just wasn't in this story, everything would have went fine.
Well, and I always feel that way watching the '90s Spider-Man show, which I keep bringing up a lot. Where when I was a kid, it was so Spider-Man. It feels like, and this isn't wholly true, but it always felt to me okay, so he creates all of his villains. Mm-hmm. It's always his fault that there's villains. It isn't always, but enough that you start kind of thinking that, and everything always goes wrong for him, and you start to think, yeah, maybe you should just hang it up.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that gives poignancy to whenever he considers it, especially the famous times in 50 and stuff. You can definitely empathize with that kind of impulse he has to give it up, even though you don't want to see a superhero give in and be a wimp about it. But it's certainly not that if you have a character like this where it's it's questionable whether or not he's making a positive difference in people's lives.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want him to be a quitter and to not be proactive, but at the same time, it'd be a lot worse if he was just no, if he was so full of himself. He's no, I'm supposed to be the superhero. So, we see Spider-Man take his costume off a lot and think about quitting. Are there stories? Surely there are. I'm not thinking of any right off. Are there stories where he goes to somebody like Reed Richards or somebody and tries to get his powers taken away?
I'm trying to think. Not off the top of my head that I
Like
can think of, but I'm sure that's happened before.
without that he wouldn't have the responsibility. That would make sense.
Yeah, I know, like, in the 90s when Ben Reilly took over, Peter Parker and Mary Jane kind of went off and did their own thing and weren't featured main characters in the Spider-Man books for a while, of course, because the intent of bringing Ben Reilly in was to say the original Peter Parker is back, he's single, he's unmarried, and we can do kind of the more classic romantic drama Spider-Man story stuff in Ben Reilly's personal life and continue with the superheroic stuff. But he still had his powers. But that was, like, I think the closest thing I can think of off the top of my head. But it might have happened before.
Surely that's happened. If it hasn't, that's the one I want to write, Dan.
Yeah.
So Peter goes, "I've broken my arm," and the very next page, it's probably just sprained.
Yeah. I do. I am reminded, and I'm sure this is what Raimi was thinking of when he did this scene, but this scene in Peter's room here reminded me a lot of the scene from the first Spider-Man movie where he's hiding from Aunt May and Norman Osborn when they're snooping around his room looking for him.
Yeah, and this is mainly what I was thinking of when I was talking about really cinematic panels that aren't in big action scenes. Mm-hmm. I like this, and I feel like Ditko's kind of storyboarding the entire issue this way, where it feels like he's trying to make you feel like you're watching a really well directed film. I really like that panel up in the right where you see her on one side and him on the other side.
Yeah, and
I think that's really cool. And then you have that cool overhead perspective, and then him above her. It looks like you're looking at storyboards for a really cinematically shot scene there.
Yeah, and if I recall, I think Raimi used those two exact shots in the first Spider-Man movie. Like, there is an overhead perspective when they walk into the room.
Yeah, that ceiling is really high.
Yes, it is.
She looks like she is, like, 15 feet away.
And Aunt May is a decrepit old woman, don't forget, so she could be just short.
Yeah, but even that desk, though, like, they are really far away. He's really far up there. So, now Peter is going to come up with the lamest excuse for why he has a sprained arm.
He was playing volleyball.
In trying to tie it back to what happened at the beginning. I would have made it something a little more violent, although, like tetherball or something.
Mm-hmm.
Although this way his, classmates can make fun of him. Everybody here is just a complete and utter jerk. It's very much your typical, like, teenagers are mean to each other.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, things like this happen all the time. I mean, I saw them in high school happen. They might not have been as over the top about it as this, where, like, they're all laughing at him with a pink background to emphasize how angry he is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mostly what I'm reacting to is that Liz Allen or is that somebody else?
That is Liz Allen there, the blonde girl, yes.
Yeah, I don't like that. Because this is a girl that Peter has been interested in the past, and that, I mean, like, she's certainly been kind of mean to him, but I don't buy going as far as going, oh, that's that thing, that really mean thing you just said to Peter Parker, or against Peter Parker, is hilarious, Flash, good for you. I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah, Liz Allen's not the best person. You'll if we ever get to the issues in about 20 years when Harry Osborn marries Liz Allen, you will not like her even more.
In about 20 years. Yeah, maybe at some point we'll try to double up on these. Okay, moving right along. So we've got the Vulture hiding out in a grain silo, and he's pointing to his brilliant mind.
I can see the resemblance to Michael Keaton, can't you?
Sure. So this is, of course, kind of convenient. New York feels like a very small town sometimes in these books, where he's like, I know, I'll go after J. Jonah Jameson. And it's not at all because I'm in a book about Peter Parker who works there.
The most hilarious thing about this set of panels to me speaks so much to Jameson's character that I love it, right? So, the Vulture, the Vulture would have no way of knowing this, which it makes it even more hilarious. But like, just think about what he's thinking, what his plan is here. So he wants to go rob the payroll that Jameson is going to pay out to his employees, which apparently are all in cash, which is hilarious. Because Jameson
that's a good
totally
point.
pay all of his employees in cash because he's a scumbag.
Yeah, that's all. It's all under the table.
Yeah. He's not paying taxes to anyone, and somehow the government hasn't come after him yet. Like, it's just a hilarious situation.
He's probably not paying anyone at a consistent rate.
Yeah, exactly.
He's probably you get $50 this week.
And
don't spend it all in one place.
Right, I love that we also confirmed that J. Jonah Jameson is employing hundreds of people, but Betty and Peter are the only people that we know of at this point. So the Daily Bugle and Now Magazine are bigger establishments than just these two people, because we had like asked that before. We were like, is Betty like the only other employee at this place?
Somewhat facetiously, but yes.
Yeah, exactly.
You still have to assume that he has no photographers.
It's just funny. The entire situation is hilarious.
You still have to assume that he has no photographers on
like
his payroll.
maybe I'm just like out of touch and I didn't know that in the 60s everyone at newspapers was paid in cash, but I don't think so.
There's no way.
Yeah.
I still say you have to assume that he has no photographers.
No, definitely not.
There's no way he would send Peter Parker on that plane trip. So anyway, the Vulture shows up, and we're starting to get into the bad guys go up against Jonah and Spider-Man has to save him thing. I know that happens a lot again in the 90s show. I'm assuming that happens a lot in the comics too.
Yes, it does. Yeah. So Spider-Man's coming in to help Jonah. He's yelling at the Vulture that he spent years constructing this media empire that he has for himself here.
Yeah, and like this is all fun and cartoony, but it's starting to wear a little bit thin, I think.
Mm-hmm. You think so?
Yeah, just me personally. Where like he's kind of constantly the butt of this joke, where like all he cares about money, all he cares about is money, and that's supposed to be funny. And it's hard for me, and maybe this is modern sensibilities creeping in, but it's hard for me not to want to start to see a little bit of humanity in that character. Just because we're with him so often.
Yeah. I don't know. I still am entertained by him. I do like that the Vulture straight out like defines his motivation or lack thereof in this middle right panel here, where he says, "All I want is money, mister. Your money." That's all the Vulture wants.
Okay. So they're the same person then. Yeah. Except that one of them just steals it in a slightly more legal manner.
And it sort of speaks to one of the points we had made in our earlier issues, that J. Jonah Jameson is probably one of the most important members of the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery. J. Jonah Jameson isn't that much different from these people. He just doesn't have superpowers. At this point in the canon, like they humanize him to a large degree.
Absolutely.
In later stories, but
yeah, we've talked about this, where you can argue whether or not that even makes sense with some of this early stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And so there's pros and cons to doing that. But yeah, there's that's certainly maybe some commentary, obviously about moguls and people who own media empires and stuff, where just how far away are they from supervillains really?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about J. Jonah Jameson is that Stan Lee created the character to be based on the way he believed a lot of his employees perceived him. Yeah. And that's why he always wanted
he's an exaggeration of that.
Right, and that's why Stan Lee always wanted to play Jameson in a Spider-Man movie if it came out when he was old, if he was like, young enough or old enough or whatever to play the character. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting that he would position this character who's sort of a caricature of the way Stan Lee believes people perceive him as a bad guy.
And Vulture's really surprised that Spider-Man's still alive. And of course, I mean, that was a really hard fall, so fair enough.
Yeah. And it's amusing. I mean, this happened earlier in the issue, but it's still amusing to see a guy with a bird suit, like, threaten someone with a gun.
That's true. Well, especially, again, when the issue is making such a big deal out of how dangerous he is. It's like, it's the most dangerous supervillain ever. A guy with wings and a gun!
I know, it's really funny. Like, we will allow the Vulture to, like, shoot his feathers out of his wings and, like, subsequent appearances and adaptations and things. Yeah, at this point, he's just kind of a dude that has a taste for the theatrical, that can fly and has a firearm. That's about it.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, like, you put yourself back in the time that this was written, and if this happened in real life then, people would respond to it differently than they would now. But it's not like we haven't seen a lot of, like, kind of futuristic, imaginings at this period that are in this period of technology that is much more impressive than this.
Right. And I think that kind of speaks to the character of a lot of the Spider-Man villains, which I've always kind of liked about them. Like, it's amusing to see him with this gun, but I think it fits the Vulture's character in that he's just kind of a regular dude, just like a lot of the Spider-Man villains and just like Peter Parker is. Like, he's fighting supervillains that are on the same kind of, like, social status in society as him. I mean, Norman Osborn is a different thing, but, like, it's not revealed to us who the Green Goblin is for many issues. So he's an exception, but a lot of these characters are just kind of like, what if Peter Parker went bad? I think that's kind of the purpose of them. They're just people without any moral compass or character.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be cool if this issue, if it was trying to do a little bit more than just be a big action set piece, if we had a little bit more of a say, and maybe if you read these back to back, there's more of this than I'm letting on, but it'd be cool if there was a little bit of a sense of, here's where Peter Parker has gotten in his character progression, here's how much he's developed since we last saw the Vulture, and here's the Vulture exactly the same.
Yeah, that's true.
So, one of the things I also really like about this issue, Dan, is finally having a big action scene that takes place in Peter Parker's place of work.
Yeah, it is really cool. The first of many action sequences to take place at the Daily Bugle. It's pretty cool.
And again, some of the best action panels are on this page, I think, just in where camera placement and stuff.
Yeah, and this is kind of the seeding of why the connection between Peter Parker and Betty Brant and what connects them at the end of the issue. Unlike every other woman that Spider-Man has interacted with thus far, Betty doesn't fall head over heels when she sees Spider-Man in the office.
Yeah.
She's kind of afraid of him, and then when Peter Parker, reemerges all meek and mild, she admires him for that. Like, she's the reverse of Liz Allen in that she likes Peter Parker for who he is, and she's not enthralled with Spider-Man at all.
And of course, that sets up the idea that there might not really be a perfect woman for Spider-Man.
Exactly, yeah.
Because she likes him for something that he actually doesn't have, which is, she said, we'll get there, we're not actually at that panel, but she talks about how she likes that he doesn't hide, and he's, what you see is what you get, and well, that's not really true.
Exactly, right. And that's eventually, as you'll see, why their relationship ends up unraveling and falling apart and doesn't work.
Okay, because I haven't read that stuff yet, so that'll be cool to finally get to.
Yeah, it gets much better in terms of the relationship dynamics as we get along here.
I don't understand this guy just suddenly blurting out, "This place is haunted."
Yeah, that was very strange. I feel like Stanley just, like, he saw a dude there and he was like needed to give him dialogue, so he just thought whatever would come to mind. Like, they're in the building where the guy is constantly publishing editorials about, like, Spider-Man being evil. Wait, maybe he thinks that he's on the impression that Spider-Man is dead, and that's why he's saying it's haunted, because people thought he died earlier in the issue? I don't know.
Boy, yeah, I wouldn't have made that leap, but nothing makes sense.
Yeah,
like nothing you could no reason for him to say that you could possibly give him is a thing that makes sense. It's like, oh, there's papers all over the place. It's haunted. It's like, you notice this fight that's happening right in front of you? No?
Yeah.
Okay. So fight. And then they're fighting around the ink rollers, which is a cool interesting set for a big fight.
Yeah, it reminds me of those classic Golden Age fights where they'd fight on things like giant typewriters and things like that, like old supervillain like exaggerated traps and things like that.
Well, and we've seen more superhero fights in the roller room of a newspaper. Actually, I think the Mask has one. The Batman Superman World's Finest movie has one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Because newspapers are so prevalent in superhero things.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it's kind of neat if you think about it that you would have. I don't know if this is like really a thematic or metaphorical thing, but just the idea that you would have a big fight in the place where all the stories about Spider-Man are printed.
That's very true. Yeah.
And this would be one of the fights that would be printed.
Yeah.
So
ironic that
that's
Peter
kind of
Parker,
just fun, I guess.
Yeah. Ironic that Peter Parker isn't really going to have any photos of this fight that takes place in the place where it would be printed.
That's true, but then J. Jonah Jameson would be like, "Where were you?" Like,
that's right. Yeah.
Like nobody saw you anywhere, and then he's going to claim he was in a closet, so he wouldn't really be able to do that very, very readily.
Some of the panels on this page are pretty well detailed, well drawn. I particularly like the bottom three there, where we're zooming in on Spider-Man and the Vulture, and it looks really cool.
Yeah, we're starting to get some of those really expressive Spider-Man faces.
Yeah, it's awesome.
One of the things I really like about this issue is Spider-Man pretending like he's going to let the Vulture die.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of great. I think Peter is still kind of walking this line where the first thing that comes to him is the really selfish and sometimes like the worst, most awful thing he could do to a person because he doesn't like them and he wants to get his comeuppance or have them get their comeuppance. But he sometimes, I think, relishes in those moments where, or revels in those moments where he's gonna do the right thing, but it's fun to have that couple seconds of, I'm gonna let you fall.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of cathartic in the way that his insulting all of the supervillains is. He kind of is able to get out all of the moments where he's not able to react like that in real life because he would like... he has the power to, beat up people like Flash Thompson into a pulp and kill them. So he gets those cathartic moments out while he's Spider-Man. It's kind of a therapeutic thing. Like he's not able to,
and that probably helps him to not go over that line.
Exactly. Like he doesn't bully people not because Peter Parker's not the kind of person to bully people, but like with these supervillains, these are the kind of people that deserve to be put in their place verbally. You know what I mean? And he can't break character when he's Peter Parker and have a really good witty comeback when he's confronted with bullies like that.
Yeah, that identity thing with Peter Parker is one of the interesting and relatable things about the character, where in one sense, of course, he's having to wear the mask of the wimp, but on the other hand, he's still who he is, except he's got powers now, so he's basically just constantly, perpetually pretending to be who he used to be before he had superpowers.
Exactly, yeah.
Because he was that kid at one point. And now, if it weren't for for being a superhero and getting, through the responsibility message, he might very well just become the bully.
That's right, yeah.
And he would love that.
He would, in his heart of hearts. And I guess the exploration of the character, through Spider-Man is maybe wouldn't we all... sort of, like
absolutely, yeah. So he's got his famous parachute here, which is the thing he does quite a bit.
Yeah, I love. See, we don't do this kind of thing really with Spider-Man anymore, where he's able to make like webbed objects. Like in the Lizard issue, we saw him make like webbed boat shoes.
Yeah.
The webs aren't used in that sort of way in modern Spider-Man. That vanished after some time.
And this is, again, a bit where Spider-Man gets to kind of, do the cathartic thing and have fun getting revenge on someone without really hurting them. This is, if I'm not mistaken, the first time that we get a sense of how long it takes for the webbing to evaporate.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I was thinking the same thing when I was reading it. I think this is the issue where that kind of famous mantra comes from, because that's something that, we'll use in Spider-Man throughout every, adaptation from now on.
Yeah, and again, I remember it from the '90s show, but I wasn't sure if that was a thing that they come out and say in the comics, or if if it lasts longer in the comics. And so I was kind of surprised to read that where he says that it'll wear off in an hour, and I was like, oh, cool, that's there.
Oh yeah, for the most part, like that show is pretty faithful to the comics in that regard. In most regards, actually. And this is a scene we had been talking about before with Betty and Peter. I really do like Betty as a character because she's attracted to Peter for just kind of being a sweet guy and that kind of thing. Like, she likes nerdy people. I don't know. I think that's kind of cool about her,
We had some folks in the comments debating about her age, and that's a thing we've talked about before. Somebody said that that Stan Lee has come out and said, and Eric was talking to me about this earlier today too, that that Stan Lee at some point writes in the letters pages, confirming that she drops out of high school in order to work at the Bugle, and that she and Peter are very close in age.
Okay, well, I didn't read the letters pages, and I had always assumed she was a little bit older, just because in other adaptations I've seen, particularly like Spectacular Spider-Man, she's much older than him, like had graduated high school, and I guess because Spectacular Spider-Man takes place in like a more modern, contemporary kind of thing, that would make sense, because you need to be like a college graduate to have jobs.
Yeah, your labor laws are different.
Yeah. So
you wouldn't have people as often dropping out of school in order to have a full-time job, just because you can't do that. That's like, I think in all 50 states you can't do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, actually. But yeah, and maybe it's less creepy than I thought. That's true.
Well, maybe not. I'm thinking about like how late you're allowed to work, but maybe there's not a limit on how many hours a week you can work.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So I'm actually not sure about that now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, yeah. We end here with Betty and Peter with sharing a little romantic moment here amidst all this chaos, and it's a direct contrast to how we ended the last issue, where Peter Parker was kind of frustrated that his double life was making him really unsuccessful with women, and now he's sharing this tender moment with Betty. It's kind of nice.
And was that the scene where he was calling every girl he knew, or was that the
yeah,
issue
all
before
two
that?
of them.
Yeah, all two. Right. He's like, oh, she's not available. I'll try this other person. I do think it's really funny that he calls her baby.
Yeah, and Blue Eyes too, which he had called Liz Allen in the previous issue too.
As Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like reading this caption here. Stanley's kind of like, this isn't the typical ending of a superhero tale. Well, I mean, maybe like them, two people sharing a tender moment like amidst this chaos and stuff is not similar to other superhero endings, but like the guy getting the girl at the end of the story is like what happens most of the time. Like, I feel like the end of last issue was a little bit less typical, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I mean, he doesn't totally get the girl. I wasn't sure what he was talking about there either exactly, because sometimes he'll write a caption like that, and I'll be like, and I'll think there were other places that a caption like that would fit better, because what he's really saying is, even though there's a lot of action in this issue and we're making a really big deal out of that, oh look, cool, a big action-packed issue, it's still a high school drama before it's anything.
Yeah, and maybe he's saying that, like, the superhero wouldn't have a sprained arm or something. Like, I don't know. Because he still does have the cast on here, which I'm thinking, yeah, that is kind of atypical. We had talked about that earlier, but...
Yeah, that's atypical and neat because of how realistic it is.
Yeah, definitely.
but just as far as like he and the girl sitting there, like it really reads like he's saying you expected the last panel to be a punch in the face or the bad guy being put in a paddy wagon.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and that's it. So anyway, not the best issue we've talked about so far.
No, definitely not. But there are some cooler ones coming up. I think the next one is a team up between Spider-Man and the Human Torch, issue 8. Issue 9 is the first appearance of Electro.
Oh, cool.
And then issue 10, we get the first appearance of the Enforcers. And then Doc Ock comes back right after that. So some cool stuff coming up in the future.
Neat. Exciting.
Yeah.
Well, join us again next week for more Spider-Man Page by Page. And thanks a lot, as always, for watching and listening. I'm Captain Logan.
And I am Dan.
And we'll see you again next time.